Now, if you look back to the last episode, you'd remember that I was given caster DPS gear, and I monologued to myself that this didn't make any sense because I was in fact the fucking tree. I was hit with some news before going into Black Temple. Matt whispers me and asks if I've heard that Selborn wants me to respec Boomkin for the raid. This is news to me, I respond, but I'll give it a try. I did warn him that I won't be topping any meters at this point, but I'd give it a college try, which frankly, doesn't mean much because I did one class at community college before I called it quits, and that's a true story. He sent me my new talent tree and I spec'd in. I asked him what kind of consumes I should get, and he said a bunch of mana pots, 2 flasks of binding light, and a superior wizard oil to apply to my weapon. I then bought Blackened Basilisk for my food buff, and hit up an Eye of the Storm with Bob and Zyos to get a feel for my new spec. We got our asses kicked and I died several times, giving me high hopes for what I was about to embark on. I met up with Ziri at the footsteps of the Temple of Karapur, where I turned in the second and last quest for the attunement process. The next quest basically just had me waiting around for a few minutes, and after it's complete I get the Medallion of Karapur, which has some good shadow resist and will teleport you to Black Temple every 15 minutes. More interestingly though, you get the Hand of Adal title, which you can then use to flex on all the Wrath babies who are about to come and descend upon WoW Classic servers. The first foe I faced was High Warlord Nagentis, who was actually a pretty easy boss. He sends out his impaling spine into a player's inventory, and yes, that actually takes up a back slot, and someone else needs to come and grab it. You gotta wait until Nagentis pops his shield, and then he tosses the spine at him and it breaks the shield. When the shield breaks, everyone takes damage, so it's important for the whole raid to have health stones, potentially even 2 health stones if the fight takes too long. Looking back on this footage after killing Nagentis like 12 times, I think it's insane that I took 8,500 damage, leaving me with 900 health after the pop. Thankfully, I popped Healthstone and the healers were on point, so I lived to fight another day. The rest of the fight went fine, and the High Warlord dropped the Maelstrom's Fury, which at the time was a Bizcaster one-hand. I then received the Maelstrom's Fury. Big ups. The second boss of Black Temple is Supremus. He's like a really big Infernal, but he's blue. He's also really easy to mess up. See, this guy has a phase where he shoots volcanoes, and if the group is too spread out, he shoots them all over the place and they deal tons of damage to the entire raid, which then turns out to be a really easy wipe. To accommodate this precaution, once the volcano phase starts, in a tight pack, you need to move into a clockwise position around Supremus in order to keep the volcanoes under control. This boss definitely gets easier with experience, but it's always kinda scary. The fight went pretty smoothly up until the kite phase. I had a hard time this first raid adjusting to this rotation. I had to keep Fairy Fire up and I couldn't reapply it before it fell off because it's improved Fairy Fire with an extra 3% chance to hit and it can't be overridden. I was running low on mana quickly too because I just kept spamming with Wrath, which during heroism will do a real number on your mana bar. The kite phase starts and Supremus drops 3 of the volcanoes in close proximity, killing 6 people and scattering the space for him to drop way more. We wiped very quickly after that point. Alright, let's try this again. We kill him with the only deaths being on our side of the equation and proceeded to the interior section of Black Temple. He didn't drop any caster loot and we proceeded on to the easiest boss in the entire tier. Perhaps the entire expansion. I just have to wonder, how the fuck does one wipe on Shade of Akama? This boss is literally so easy. To activate the fight, you just need to kill the channelers that surround him, much like Mech Theoden. Once you kill them, he goes down the short flight of stairs and proceeds to get fucked by the raid in like 3 seconds. Like honestly, I don't even know what else to say about this guy. Like he shouldn't even be considered a boss. He's like a little bitch baby who folds like paper. I'm a quote-unquote friend who tried to say that I was driving when he got caught by the police in the driver's seat of his dad's truck right outside the party, drunk and without a license. Pro tip kids, if you're ever in the presence of a police officer, just shut the fuck up. Just do everybody a favor, just shut the fuck up. Use your 5th Amendment rights. Pathetic. We fucked this guy down and he drops nothing of use for me. We then took the long trek through Gorfine's Vigil, killing countless orcs along the way to our fight to the eponymous Tarang Gorfine. He casts a single debuff that increases your shadow damage taken and will cast Shadow of Death on a single target, which then kills that target and puts him in a minigame where he has to kill all of the ghosts before they reach and then wipe the raid. This boss isn't difficult as long as everyone knows what's going on with the minigame. The fight went fine up until the boss was around 5% when Demo slipped and 7 people died. We managed to pull through and he dropped some healing gloves, which I no longer needed. Next up is Gurtok Bloodboil. This boss has an interesting mechanic, but it isn't really that difficult for the DPS as long as you follow directions. He has a debuff named after himself called Blood Boil, and he casts it at the members of the raid farthest away from him. This debuff stacks an insane amount of times, and with the tanks soaking most of it, the heals need to stay on point with the tanks at all times. The raid splits into 3 groups to properly deal with the debuff. These 3 groups need to rotate and each take a stack of blood boil, essentially taking turns while the boss gets melted down. I'll be the first to admit it. This first encounter with blood boil was kinda scuffed. See, due to rearrangements in the structure of the raid team, I still needed to keep Hots up on the tanks on some bosses, this guy being one of them. I gave it my best attempts to keep Hots up on Augs, although they were thwarted not long before Gertog himself succumbed to our assault. This particular fight was tough. I, along with many others, died, but at least I got caster shoulders, which were a downgrade from the ones that I'm already wearing. It's early July 29th when I'm writing this, and in the 4 months and 27 days since acquiring these shoulders, I have never once worn them. They just sit in my bank. We then found ourselves at the Reliquary of Souls. This boss, in stark contrast to the Shade of Akama, is one of the most interesting bosses in the expansion. In the Reliquary, you fight these angry stone cube guys. During the first phase, you fight the Essence of Suffering, which will reduce the effects of healing on the raid by 100%. Healers should try to help DPS the boss in this phase because mana and health are restored during each intermission. After fighting the Essence of Suffering, you fight the Essence of Desire, which makes it so all healing effects are doubled, but your mana bar gradually decreases in capacity over the fight. Also, half of the damage you deal to the boss gets reflected back to you during this phase. The third phase of this fight has you dealing with the Essence of Anger, which casts a debuff that increases shadow damage taken, but also makes it so you fucking pump. The numbers on Reliquary are huge just because of this guy. Onto the fight. Everything goes fine. At the very end of the fight, I died, and the entire raid was left alive standing at 40% health, but we still managed to down these emotional cubes. They dropped nothing of use for me, so we headed through the Den of Mortal Delights. This place is actually a brothel, and back in the day the mobs there used to be labeled concubines, but due to the awful controversy regarding the old staff at Blizzard and how they treated the women in their workplace, it's been reworked to be less suggestive. We cleared our way through the packs in there and made our way to Mother Shiraz. This fight can be challenging. She does a shit ton of shadow damage, does a silence, and can cast a Fatal Attraction debuff, and if you get it, you have to run away from the boss and the rest of the raid. Mommy starts off the fight by saying,
"Business, pleasure. You seem a little tense."
which must have made me extra sensitive because I was having a lot of trouble performing in this encounter. I lost Fairy Fire and had trouble reapplying it, and then caught this Fatal Attraction for Mommy, which caused me to die almost instantaneously. The leaders asked my replacement, and more importantly my good friend Muff Snorkler the Resto Druid, to give your boy a V-Res. I caught this battle res, and then brought Crack Heels, who by the way is an enhancement shaman, back to life. I fought on for like 30 more seconds before I caught another bout of Fatal Attraction. The rest of the team fought on, and went down Mother Shiraz. Following this fight, we fought our way through the Grand Promenade, a distinctly not green and demonic spot in the Black Temple, populated by blood elves in a spot reminiscent of Silver Moon. From there, I made my way into the Chamber of Command, where the Illidari Council holds their weekly meetings. Now, I only know this fight from the DPS point of view, but from what I understand the strategy to be, it's that a person is assigned to each mod that isn't the Paladin, Gathios the Shatterer. So what I do here basically is just keep attacking the Paladin while ignoring the AoEs that hit like a truck and the other 4 bosses that share a health pool with Gathios. This was one of the more heartbreaking fights I've had since coming back to Classic. We wiped on the Council when it was at 3% health. The AoE started to get a bit out of hand, and that sunk the raid health pretty low, and then Wurzie died. And after she died, which by the way might have been partially my fault, because although I was a boomkin, I was still off healing for a good chunk of these fights, and I didn't have full life blooms on her before she got low. We tried again, and after a few deaths, Zai was called to wipe it at 73%. It's a damn shame, but once again, I was just happy to be raiding with a top tier guild in a current content raid, so I wasn't too mad. This new spec was taking some serious getting used to though, and I was still wearing mostly healing gear despite the caster DPS pieces I was given in the last episode. 3rd time's the charm, or at least I hope. Wurzie died at 50%, and I immediately battle-resed her. Perhaps I didn't hear the leader say in comms not to battle-res, and I apologize for my mistake. I learned that it is customary to only battle-res when given permission, as it is on a hefty 20-minute cooldown. We fought on to 26% before they called to get a DI out and wipe it up. Okay, 4th time's the charm. AoE gets out of hand and we die at 79% health. Alright guys, for real this time. 5th time's the fucking charm. We get them down a decent time, with few mistakes, killing the final boss before Illidan Stormrage. I feel very ready. I am mere steps away from my initial goal upon re-entry into Azeroth. We wait at the door past the Chamber of Command for a Kama to open the doors to the stairway up to the temple summit where Illidan stands ready. He states that he cannot do this alone, which, no shit Sherlock, that's why you brought 25 people and Maiev Shadowsong along with you. This dude is not a joke. During the first phase of the fight, he summons these parasites that will wipe the raid if they aren't dealt with immediately. They only have about 1,000 health though, so it's not a huge deal. After he drops it to around 2/3 of his health, he flies up into the air and summons the Flames of Azzinoth. You have to stack in near assigned groups to minimize the damage. Typically you want to kill the flame on the side of the room adjacent to the stairway first, but I don't really know if it makes a huge difference. Believe it or not, the flames spawn flames that do a truckload of damage, and if you're a tank wanting to cross the flame, you're gonna really want to call that out to the healers. Once these flames are down, Illidan comes back with more parasites, and you keep DPSing him down until he gets to around 30% or so when you get jailed into a bubble. Maiev Shadowsong pops up and warns Illidan that there will be no prison for him this time, referencing how he was freed by Kael'thas and Lady Bash the last time she tried to lock him up. They free you and your homies out of the county jail, and you're supposed to melt him down to the point where your rogues are guaranteed to get a glaive drop every single kill. First, we get fucked pretty hard on the flames and wipe. The second time, he started cleaving at us at 93% health, which deleted the whole raid pretty quickly. At this point, it's 9:30 PM and we've been raiding for almost 4 hours. Sweat called it for the night. Rather disappointing, this is a goal I'd worked hard on for weeks just to achieve, and it had just been pushed back another 5 days. It's been a long day, and it's become very apparent that I have a lot of things that I need to get used to. What did I do in this gap of time? I started the quest for my Swift Flight form because I felt really goofy flying around on a 280% Griffin while being a druid. First, you need to head up to the Moonglade to speak with Loganar, the Biz Druid trainer. My druid homies knows what's up with this guy. He's where it's at when it comes to training your druid. Like, unless you're respecing for arena, you go to Logi Bear. My druid homies knows what's up with him, like for reals, he's the best. Anyways, I'm not here to train, but to pick up a quest. He wants me to go seek out Morthus Whisperwing in the Cenarian Refuge. Morthus gives me a quest called the Word of Awakening, which has me fly around Zangarmarsh picking up bog blossoms along with some other herbs to hand back into him. Once you're done with this, he has you go back to the Moonglade to rescue Clintar Dreamwalker from the Emerald Dream. Following this, we go back to Morthus, who tells us to go talk to a guy in the Evergrove, who then tells us to go track down a spirit wandering the realm of Limbo. Once you acquire the Book of Raven from him, he has you go to Nagrand, in that area where that creepy scene with the dead orc kids are. The Watcher there has you capture a hawk, but this hawk is very fast and you need to be quick with that net if you want to catch it. After this, you have to go to Skedis to collect 8 Ravenstones and then bring them to Arnthorn Windsong back in the Evergrove. Windsong then has you collect the Essence of the Eagle. In order to get this, you have to fly out to Lake Jaroon and Terakar. It's very preferable to keep a healer with you for this quest. Because Natalia so graciously helped me, I was able to defeat the Guardian of the Eagle and acquire its essence. I then collected the Falcon Essence and then the Hawk Essence with ease. Once I get all of them, Arnthorn combines these essences into a package and sends me off with them to give back to Morthus at the refuge. Morthus then asks you to venture back into Azeroth to collect the South Fury Moonstone on the Ashara bank of the South Fury River and bring it back to him. I found the Moonstone and then was sapped by the goblin, Rizzle Sprysprocket, who came out of nowhere. She took the gem and dived into the river. She then threw bombs at me as I shifted in and out of aquatic form while I chased her down the river. She eventually gives up and gives me the stone, and I made my way back to Morthus in Zangarmarsh. Morthus then gave me a quest to summon and then kill Anzu, the Raven God, in Sethic Halls. Flash forward 19 hours and I'm ready to go. We get through the dungeon pretty easily. I summon Anzu and we kill him. The mount doesn't drop, but at least I finished the quest chain. I go back to Morthus where I learn Swift Flight form and get the Idol of the Raven Goddess, an item I still wear today because it's fucking biz. Alright, back to the point. I need to be candid for a second. This Boomkin thing hit me by surprise. How did I not see the writing on the wall the other day when I did Hyjal? They needed a Fairy Fire, and whilst I was capable of going Dream State for that run, it wouldn't have been good for anybody to have permanent Dream State Druid. Quite frankly, I also just wasn't the best healer and would be willing to bet that I would not have made it far in Black Temple if I stayed Resto. They needed a Boomkin just as bad as they needed a Resto Druid, and believe it or not, it's much easier to get someone to main a Resto than it is to get them to main a Boomkin. And frankly, I wonder why. I already had 4 epic caster pieces, but even a few days later, I still was not pumping very hard due to the majority healing set that I worked so hard for in the previous 2 weeks. I thought I'd still play healer when I'm not raiding, and while I did continue to do that for a bit after switching my raiding spec, I did not want to go back to healing and told my guild so. As a matter of fact, it was a huge relief. See, where healing in Classic was a cakewalk, I healed a 3 rogue no tank Stratholme run as a fresh 60 and we cleared it to the end. Healing in TBC Classic is fucking stressful. The tank is always taking 1,000,000 damage a second. If you look away from the screen to hit your vape, it's life or death for them. You gotta keep moving for mechanics, and every other boss is a silence for some reason. Mount Hyjal was certainly more stressful than Blackwing Lair for me, no doubt about it. I decided to embrace my new Moonkin form. With an extra 5% crit chance after acquiring the tier 6 caster gear to complement, I could actually be quite the force to be reckoned with. A Moonkin. A boom chicken. If the chicken is my way, so be it. If to become a big cock is where my destiny lies, then I shall become the biggest cock on Azeroth. It will take time and struggle, but in a few short weeks I can give you my word that I will no longer just be Axe Body Spray. No. Not me. I'll be Axe Pumper Spray. Stay tuned for the next episode of The Road to Tier 6 by Axe Chronicles.